For me, I believe trigger press is tomorrow's problem, not today's. I believe this is a big contributing factor to why officers perform the way they do, and it's because they are taught trigger press, a methodical, skillful manipulation of that trigger to get a better result on target. The problem is, doesn't correlate over to real life for the most part of what we're seeing for shootings. Today we're going to be covering some foundational skills under the shooting pillar. One thing that I want to establish first is a common understanding of what we're looking to really accomplish. I'm going to make the assumption right off the bat that nobody would disagree with me that if I told you I could make you shoot faster and more accurate, that would be a negative thing, right? So if we subscribe to that, what we need to now define is how we look at what that bar is and how we assess our standards and qualifications and what we're looking at. When I look at training, the goal for me is to design a program that's going to assist me in developing skill. I want to do this because I don't know what skill or the level of skill that I'm going to need to be called upon to execute at any given day in the course of our duties. It could be traditionally low level, or it could be a high level threat of a committed adversary. Regardless, I need to make sure I have that skill level to be able to execute to do my job. So when I look at training, we have to design training in a manner that's going to allow us to build a surplus of skill. All right, this is extremely important, and we need to change the way we are looking at this methodology of how we go about that. We need to step out of the result-oriented training, and we need to step into process-oriented training. Process-oriented training, when you are training, regardless of what is happening, it's going to assist you in developing awareness and pay attention to the fine details, the minutiae of what's actually happening in the firing sequence. When we train like that, which is process-oriented, regardless of whether the rounds are bad or not, we are learning from that. Even when it's a negative round or a bad round that we're shooting, I'm able to extrapolate information from that so that I can make that corrective measure through purposeful training to get rid of that behavior. When you focus on result-based training, which is like qualifications, the only metric of success is the target, whether it's pass or fail, right? That is absence of information and awareness, and this is going to lead you quickly to a plateau and a low level amount of skill, which is not going to be good for you to do your job, and what we're currently seeing across the board in law enforcement. Result-based training with low level of skill, and it results in a poor execution of our job. When I look at training, I equate it to like a bank account, your checking account. I want to set up training that's going to constantly be depositing money into that bank account. The more that I do purposeful training, the more money that I'll be putting in that account. When real life happens and whatever that problem is, I'm able to cash that check. Whether it's a 25-cent problem or a $20 problem, I need to make sure I have the funds in the account to be able to solve that problem. What I'm currently seeing across law enforcement now is that we have a lot of officers with 25-cent bank accounts, and they're running into low-level $2 problems, and although they're simple to solve, they lack the funds to be able to cash that check. We need to make sure we're training appropriately. Also, we need to understand, and this is a big problem for law enforcement, we need to separate training from real life. Real life execution will be whatever it needs to be to get that job done. Training should be designed to be harder. It should be rigorous, it should be painful, you should be making lots of mistakes. During those mistakes, if we're applying a process-oriented training strategy, we'll be identifying these micro deficiencies, being aware of what they are and how they're happening in the shooting sequence, so therefore we can correct those behaviors. As we correct those behaviors over and over, we'll now be building skill and depositing money into our account, so when a more complex problem arises, we'll be able to execute on demand. In this training program, I'm going to be asking you to do things that are uncomfortable, not uncontrolled. There's a difference. Uncomfortable is I'm pushing myself at a speed that I'm not currently capable of doing, but it's at a pace where I can actually still process what is going on. Uncontrolled is where I'm shooting at a pace where it is so far beyond my capability, where I'm not able to tie cause and effect, and you're gonna hear me say this a bunch, to what actually was the contributing factor to that mistake. If we're training uncontrolled, we are wasting ammo, we are wasting time. If we're training uncomfortable and we have the ability to tie cause and effect to what is happening, both positive and negative, we are building skill, right? That is depositing money into our banking account. That's where we want to live. Remember, there's no such thing as advanced shooting. There's only perfect execution of the fundamentals. In this course, there's going to be no fancy tricks. There's going to be no crazy techniques that's going to lead you to the homeland, right? It's going to take hard work and dedication. You have to be committed to this process that I'm going to outline for you today or over these couple days of filming, and then go work on it. And then pay attention to the finer points that we're going to cover today. We'll introduce a bunch of different problems that we commonly see as I teach, and we'll talk about what are usually contributing factors to them. Nonetheless, pay attention to the core principles that we'll outline today and that will lead you to success. Just make sure that you understand that this does take a level of commitment. So my challenge to you as law enforcement officers is to be more committed, raise the standard, embrace the process. Yes, it will suck, but this is what is needed for our profession to elevate. All right, guys. So I'm going to get off my rant right there, and we're going to actually start teaching some stuff. So you don't have to have been in a ton of gunfights to make this correlation here, right? But if you've watched a few body camera footage or you've seen a ton of body cam footage, I think we'll all agree that we're seeing officers execute very aggressive shooting. The problem is they don't actually possess the capability to shoot at that level of aggression and maintain accountability. So the first thing we're going to work on, which I'm a big proponent of, is we are going to work on learning how to build a durable and consistent grip, all right? With that, we have to remove the trigger press from this process, all right? Inherently, the way law enforcement and military personnel are trained, we are trained to add in that methodical trigger press too early. For me, I believe trigger press is tomorrow's problem, not today's. I believe this is a big contributing factor to why officers perform the way they do, and it's because they are taught trigger press, a methodical, skillful manipulation of that trigger to get a better result on target. The problem is, doesn't correlate over to real life for the most part in what we're seeing for shootings. So what they did do by that is they've underdeveloped their grips, and grip is going to be one of the core foundational skills that we need to do. But like I said, we can't develop grip if we're going to press the trigger nice and gingerly. So I need us to smash on those triggers very aggressively. This is going to be difficult, but it's going to teach you a ton about your grip. All right, so this drill that we're going to look at is called trigger control at speed. Now, when I'm pressing this trigger, I'm going to be smashing it. I'm going to put it, for this demonstration, right? I'm going to put it as far as I can outside the trigger guard. All right, this is the farthest I can get my finger from the trigger, and this is going to be the most egregious press that I can think of to execute on demand. So this is a very realistic situation that law enforcement constantly finds themselves in, right? Pointing a gun at a potential threat, but the threat does not meet the rules of engagement yet. So we don't want to have our trigger finger on the trigger because that would be dangerous, but we still want to be ready to act when that threat does present what is appropriate for us to use deadly force. So although this is, like I said, a great way to test a durable, consistent grip, as we're going to dive into, it's also a very realistic application for law enforcement. All right, but right now we're just going to focus on developing shooting skill. Like I said prior, we need to separate training and actual reality sometimes, and we need to just focus on developing skill and let real life be whatever real life be. We'll just have enough skill hopefully developed that whatever real life is, we can meet that level of skill. All right, so I'll rack the gun. Obviously it's empty. This is done dry fire. You'll notice that there's a black reference mark paster on the target. Right now, I just want you to point your red dot at that black visual stimulus. That black reference mark there is for you to attach your eyes to and overlay the gun. We'll dive a little bit more into that, but right now, all I really need you to pay attention to is to put your dot on that. And then I want you to smash the trigger extremely hard as you can. And then I want you to pay attention to what that dot does, all right? So we'll do a couple incorrect here, right? I want you to see the behavior of this gun. This is most likely what I see from a lot of law enforcement shooters. They are going to smash on this trigger. Since that manipulation of the trigger is uncomfortable for them and foreign, they are going to most likely induce some type of subconscious response from their grip with pressures, and they're gonna start influencing the gun, all right? So they're gonna aim, you'll aim in, and then this would be what most likely I see. They'll just do something like that, right? They smash on the trigger real hard, and you can see the nose for a right-handed shooter just kind of dumps low left. What's that from is your firing hand pressure change, right? So I felt stressed. I don't press the trigger in this manner often, and now I'm asked to do it, and I don't possess the discipline to maintain a consistent grip around this pistol. And you're gonna see that's what shooting really comes down to a lot. And you're gonna see with all the principles that I outlined, it comes down to discipline, right? We have to have the ability to maintain whatever we started it with, for better or worse, right? And we'll dive deeper into that later on in the series, right? But whatever I start with in my grip, I need to maintain that regardless. So what I'm looking for from the feedback from the red dot on the black pacer is that it just goes off and the dot just kind of like wobbles a little bit on the black pacer, but it shouldn't be going anywhere outside of that. You can start off around 4 or 5 yards, all right, to make this work for you. All right, so same thing, I'm gonna come out and I'll smash on that trigger. That dot had a little bit of leftward movement, so that's telling me that I had a slight little bit of pressure changing in my hand, all right? So we'll clean that up. That looked good. That looked good, right? So what you're gonna see, and what you should be tying cause and effect to every type of behavior. And since there's no recoil going on, right, we'll be more likely to pick up on it. So here'll be some common problems that you'll see, right? I'm gonna press the trigger real aggressive, and I feel like I need to do extra. I need to help the gun. You actually need to do nothing, right? But a lot of times you'll see guys, they're like, man, this thing's gonna go and I need to try to keep it level, right? And they'll smash the trigger and they'll push on it like that, right? These are things that we're gonna dive into when we talk about grip shortly, but right now I just want you playing with the trigger control at speed to get some type of understanding on how to press the trigger, all right? A lot of this training is gonna be exploratory. This is gonna require you to play with stuff, embrace the process, and start to solve your own problems, all right? I'm not gonna be there with you. Other instructors are not gonna be there with you throughout your whole training. And you need to start being able to learn how to tie cause and effect and then dissecting these little micro problems with a deeper understanding of what's happening, right? So like this first drill is going to start that process for us. So I'm purposely leaving out a lot of components right now for you because I want you to start to build that process of tying cause and effect to be able to see if you can start picking up on where these pitfalls are coming from with your shooting, right? Some key areas to pay attention to is structure in the wrist changing, pressure in the hand changing, right? Either hand, support hand or shooting hand. Structure from the body, right? If I get stressed out and I start to push on the gun, right? From my arms, from my shoulders, all of that will cause problems to make the gun react different, right? What we're looking to do is to get the gun to behave the same way every time, regardless of the manner we're shooting, whether it's aggressive or it's more conservative, it does not matter. The gun should behave the same, right? You're gonna hear this term a lot. We are trying to get the gun to behave in a predictable manner. This will tie back in later on to why we want that, but right now, that's all I really need you to understand is I want you to step up. I want you to aim the gun at whatever, a light switch. I prefer something small, whatever you have, and start really smashing on that trigger and start assessing, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What did I feel my firing hand do? What did I feel my support hand do? What did I feel the structure in my wrists do? Either or. What did I feel the tension from my body do, right? We also want to try to maintain a relaxed posture, right? A relaxed structure. So it's not so relaxed that it's like a wet noodle, but it's not so tense where we're going to be more likely to transfer it into the gun, right? All the tension, if you're feeling tight in your biceps and your shoulders are real high, all of that tension has a high probability to transferring into gun. And I'm not going to say it always does. There's plenty of great shooters that shoot with more tension and are able to be successful. What I am saying is that from my training and experience and the people that I've trained across the country, most people that shoot like that are unable to maintain that level of tension consistently, and they usually end up transferring it into the gun, regardless, with this being a process-oriented type of program, you will find what the appropriate amount of tension is for you based on understanding what the behavior of the gun should be, right? So, like I said, we know that we want the gun, when I smash on that trigger, to just wobble a little bit on the black paster. If you're actually pressing the trigger very aggressively and you get that behavior, you can start to check a box as, okay, I'm onto something. This is probably the appropriate amount of tension and pressure and consistency and durability across this platform right now. As we start to layer more skills and I ask more of you, you're gonna see that maybe there's gonna have to be some tweaks to that and some refinements as we go out throughout the process. So I'll do a couple more demonstrations for you guys so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Some things I see with guys that have really big fingers. I have small hands. Sometimes guys trigger finger really far, and when they try to smash in from here, they start to push on the frame, right? That's never going to be conducive for this drill. So if you have to, like if you have really big hands, just float your trigger finger outside of the gun and just smash in like that. All right, so I'll do some like that so you can kind of see if you had bigger hands. I just want you to isolate the grip and then just smash on the trigger. All right, so those are looking good. Dots literally just staying right in the black paster. Depending on the gun that you're shooting, the PDP, the way the trigger mechanism works, the dot pretty much just stays right on there. With Glocks, it'll still stay on there, but it just vibrates more due to that mechanism. All right, so if you're seeing like some crazy vibration, but it's not shooting any particular direction, that's really what I'm worried about. If it's just wobbling, that's fine. All right, if it starts shooting different directions, well, then we know that we need to start tying cause and effect, and we need to start looking at the big culprits, right? Firing hand, support hand, shoulder tension, structure in the wrist. These are the things that are gonna start causing that gun to deviate, right? I think we all would agree, since the gun is not firing, that if the gun moves off there, clearly we are the only contributing factor that could have did that, right? So if we're doing that without recoil, most likely once we add recoil to it, we're going to probably exacerbate that behavior, right? It's going to be even worse. It'll be magnified. So this is a great foundational drill just to start that, right? Also, it's phenomenal for how what we see from historical data of what law enforcement officers are finding themselves in, being forced to be able to shoot or press the trigger very aggressively, right, and maintain accountability. The problem that we have now is that they're pressing the trigger very aggressively. They're just unable to maintain accountability. This is the first building block that we're going to do to start building in that accountability and dialing back our shooting it. When we're looking at these rounds going off, right, this is a laser trainer here to help you see. Obviously, there's an offset from what I'm seeing and when the laser's coming out, right? I don't want you equating for your height over bore. I just want you putting your red dot on here. If, depending on your zero, if the rounds are printing a little bit low, not worried about that. I just want you to pay attention to the feedback as we get further on. But right now we're not shooting rounds, so you don't have to worry about it. But if this laser represented your dot, right, it should just kind of wobble like some type of form inside this black paster. If we're seeing the dot go like this, starts there and it starts to streak down, that's most likely pressure changes from your firing hand, right? If you see the dot start to go up like this, that's most likely you are healing into the gun. You are pushing on your shoulders, or you are changing structures in your wrist. Same thing if the dot starts to shoot to the right, if you're a right-handed shooter, that is a pressure change, right, in your support hand. And what happens here is that you are aligned, everything is set, you're aligned, right, everything's looking good, the dot's sitting in there, and then when you go to press the trigger, that makes you feel uncomfortable, right, at that speed, and then you push the gun, right? You influence the gun. You change the way you are solidifying that grip while you are pressing the trigger. And this is why it's really difficult to see when you're in the beginning, when you're firing live rounds, because the recoil masks that behavior, right? So this is a great way to get rid of recoil, save ammo, and have a better idea of what's actually happening with the gun. But whether you have a laser trainer or not, it's irrelevant. I probably prefer you use your regular gun and just pay attention to the dot, because the feedback from that actual gun and the weight of it is going to make a little bit more sense. It's going to tie apples to apples better, right? So we really just want to pay attention to what's happening in that feedback and just smash. All right. So once that's looking good, you're like, yep, I feel pretty comfortable like that. I'm able to hold the gun in a manner that's durable and consistent. I'm able to smash on the trigger really aggressively, and I get minimal to no movement from my dot. All right. We're now going to shift gears a little bit. All right. We're now going to do a one-shot return. All right. So what I'm looking for here is how the gun returns back. And what we're building up to, and I'll just give you a little precursor, is we are developing the skill to be able to shoot in a predictive manner. Predictive shooting is your ability to shoot faster than your brain can process and still maintain 100% accountability. This is primarily used as a training strategy. All right, we're going to dive deeper into it. I don't want to lose you on it, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper. I just want you to understand what we are starting to build towards, because this is a phenomenal training strategy. Doesn't mean you need to engage targets or people in this manner, but if you are able to do that, anything realistic is going to seem very easy and under controlled. All right, so one-shot return, one-shot return. So now I'm going to aim in at the target. I'm going to fire a round. Gun's going to recoil a particular way. And then all I'm paying attention to is, boom, how does it return? The gun should return precisely back to that paster. Now, there's not going to be a bullet to associate with that return yet. It's going to have to be me tying cause and effect and being aware of what's going on. So now we need to talk about some aiming stuff, all right? Your vision, your visual focus should be anchored on this black pacer. This is why I have that there. It's a small black pacer because that is how refined I want you to be looking at stuff. So as we progress throughout this program and the black pacers go away and I'm just looking at a target, I need to be able to make my own small spots like this black pacer rapidly, quickly to drive the gun to that spot. We'll dive more into it later. Right now, I just want you to understand that this is a visual marker for you to anchor your vision to. You are not looking at your red dot. You are just putting your vision here, overlaying your dot. You are aware of what the dot's behavior is doing, but your eyes and your focus is on the black paster. When I fire the one round, the gun will recoil. I'm not concerned where the round goes. Yes, the round should be right around the black paster. But regardless, this particular evolution, we are going to separate that shooting, right? So I could press on the trigger real egregious, push on the gun, the round could go low left, but then it recoils and then it lands precisely. So it tells me two things, right? Yep, I totally fucked up the execution of that round, but I maintained good visual discipline and the gun returned precisely back. So our eyes are what's going to give us the precision for the gun to return. Your grip, your structure, right? That's going to give us the gross return. But if I want precision, that's where the visual acuity and anchoring comes in. That's going to give me that precision to come back. All right. I equate this to basically what we've been doing our whole life with the hand-eye coordination. We've all used computers before, right? When you're on your computer and you're dragging the mouse over to an icon, right? You're not staring at the mouse cursor and going over to it. You just look at the icon, you whip the mouse over, and what do you know? It lands pretty much right on it. We are tapping into that same type of behavior with firearms, all right? And we have to be extremely critical of what we are seeing. This is probably the most difficult component of shooting, and we will dive into this definitely deeper. But just right now, all I need you to know is I want you to lock and anchor your vision to here. No matter what happens with the gun, I don't care what the gun does, keep your eyes here and then assess how the gun returns. All right? So I'll demonstrate this real quick for you. just start off at 5 yards, guys. As the program goes, we'll progress way farther back, 25 yards or so, maybe more. But right now, five yards is plenty good while we start to figure this stuff out. All right, so there's only going to be one shot. All right, I'm going to bring my trigger finger back into making contact with the blade. All right, I want to remove some of the grip development stuff right now because I really want to pay attention to just return, right? Sometimes we have to separate different components, let some things go to work on something else, and then we'll bring them back together, right? So right now we're just isolating the return of the gun and understanding how to keep consistent, durable grip pressures while we're pressing the trigger, and then understanding the visual anchoring and connection to a small spot, what that has to look like to get that gun to be extremely precise, all right? It'll look like this. So I'm back in on the trigger, not doing the crazy trigger press right now. I'm just letting it go, and then I'll just press and I'll assess the return. All right, so it returned back. It was a little bit slow, right? Because I just didn't get off the trigger enough. I'm talking to you and forgetting what to do. If you look at the round, right? The round slightly below the paster, right? Not worried about that. I'm worried about the return. The round's below the paster because I'm holding on the black paster, and there's a slight offset here at 5 yards. I'm not concerned about that. All right, that's not a shooting problem. That's a height over bore issue. All right, so we'll do that again, and I'll get off that trigger faster to get that thing to return quicker. There we go. All right, so you can see I'm just smacking the trigger. I'm not coming outside, but I'm smacking the trigger, and then I'm just assessing how that gun returns, right? You can see that the grouping is right there, right below the black paster. That's consistent with my 0 on this pistol. When I'm assessing the return, the thing that I'm paying attention to is just as quickly as the gun leaves that black paster, it should return back to that paster, all right? So if it whips out, but then gingerly comes back, well, there's something going on there, right? And there's several contributing factors. It could be some type of visual expansion in your eyes, right? Where you're starting to look all over the place, you're starting to expand your vision. It could be some type of physical tension that you've now clamped down on your hands and you're slowing that gun back from returning. There could be several things here, right? But this is what you need to start paying attention to and start tying cause and effect. When I look at the paster and the gun leaves it, it should whip right back to it and it should be precise, all right? You'll execute this several times in your training, or as long as it takes you to figure that out, and then we'll start to layer it even more. The key thing is to understand what we are looking to get. The behavior from the gun is that when the dot leaves the black paster, it comes back as quick as it left, and it lands as precise as it started. All right, guys, so now we're gonna get into our next layer. Now, any of these particular stages that we just outlined for you, this might take you a day of working on, right? That trigger control at speed drill that I do, that we were doing dry with no ammo, I do that every day for maintenance, right? All of this stuff requires you to put an immense amount of work to refine and develop and also maintain, because shooting skill is extremely perishable, right? So trigger control at speed is a staple in my dry fire program. I don't do it much on the live range, but I do a ton of it in dry fire, okay? So work on that. It may take you a week to figure that out. That's fine. It does not matter. Then, once we're getting a good feel of how to create a good durable grip, then we're gonna start, hey man, can I get this gun to return precisely and come back as quick as it left, which is that one-shot return drill. Once that's looking good, we're gonna add another layer to it, all right? This drill is, we call 50-50s, and basically it is a little modification to the Ben Stoeger doubles drill, which we will work up to. But I find that this little interim iteration in here helps people really understand what's going on in the gun. So the way this is gonna work, because the goal, like I said before, is to build up to predictive shooting, is, hey, cool, I'm doing everything right. I'm pressing the trigger, the bullet's going where I'm pressing the trigger aggressively, the grip is durable and consistent, my vision is anchored precisely, gun is returning back, great. All of that is looking good. But now we need to push ourselves and start layering and ask us to do more together. So now we're going to start merging all this stuff together, giving yourself more tasks to see if you actually have this skill currently figured out. All right. So this will be the 50-50. So what I do is I just remove the magazine. I will have one round in the gun. All right. I will bring my trigger finger back into the trigger guard. I will smash on the trigger twice. All right, I am not worried about trigger manipulation. I will let you know at what point you should be worried about it, but just a little hint. For me personally, and what I think is beneficial for law enforcement, when we are training, we should be smashing on the triggers, all right? Nobody has ever had a problem once they've learned how to smash on a trigger when I allow them to say, hey man, you can press it nicer, any which way you want, however you feel, prep, press, slow roll through. No one's ever had a problem figuring that out. So if you can learn it the hard way, going backwards is easy. The problem is when you learn it doing only slow and methodical, you are unable to press it very aggressively because you've hurt yourself with grip development because of that. So when we get to some more complex stuff, I'll allow you to have a little bit of freedom in the way you manipulate the trigger. Nonetheless, it shouldn't be slowing down our shooting, but we'll talk about that later on. Right now, we're going to be smashing triggers still, all right? So I'm going to be 5 yards from this target, and I'm going to do the 50-50. So I'll be smashing on, I'll be aimed in, not drawing, just aimed in. I'll be smashing on the trigger twice. And obviously the first round will go off. I'm paying attention to the return of the gun and what happens on the return, because there'll be a dead, or not a dead trigger, but there'll be no round going off. So it'll be round, recoil, gun returns. I'm paying attention to that return. And then simultaneously, I'm pressing the trigger and paying attention to what that dot behavior does when the trigger goes off. Now, we have to talk about a little bit of aiming strategies here right now. This is getting into that predictive shooting, right? So predictive shooting, as I mentioned before, is I'm pressing the trigger knowing that my dot is not on my intended point of aim, point of impact, but knowing it will be if I don't change anything. All right, it's going to sound like wizardry. It's okay. Trust me, embrace the process. This does work if you execute it, and this will teach you how to develop a very high level of skill in shooting. All right, so when I'm aimed in here, I'm pressing the trigger twice, regardless of what the dot is telling me. All right, now we should be aware of what the dot is doing, and the reason why I say that is I don't want you waiting for the dot to return to give you permission to press the trigger. I just want you pressing the trigger twice regardless, and you should see some type of feedback from the dot, whether it's over here, back in the paster, when that trigger is breaking, all right? And since like I said, there's no round, it should be very apparent of what happens, all right? So the first one I'm gonna do is incorrect. This is incorrect. I don't want you to do this. This is what I see when people normally do this drill. This is not correct. You are wasting your time, all right? So I'll aim in, and then watch what I do here, guys. Incorrect. All right, so that was a little dramatic, right? But what you saw there was I aimed in, I shot the round, the gun recoiled, it returned precisely, so all of that was good, and then I waited for the dot to settle, and then I pressed the trigger again, and the dot stayed right there, and everything was great. The only problem is I didn't shoot predictively, right? So I'm losing a major component of this drill to get us to shoot faster, but still maintain accountability. This is very difficult, but this is important to get you to understand this so you can start to develop that skill so you can employ this weapon very fast and aggressive and still maintain 100% accountability with surgical accuracy. So now I'll do it correct for you guys. All right? You should not hear the reset of the trigger. That's how fast I'm pressing this trigger at, this 5 yard distance. All right, do that again. That looked okay. It was like the bottom of the paster a little bit. Good. Remember, I'm paying attention to the return. The rounds are obviously going to be there. All right, so all that's really happening here, like I said, is I'm judging the return, right? All I did was right here is just shoot a couple rounds aimed at the black paster. All the information, all the value was in all the stuff that's not scoreable on this target, right? That's a given. I'm standing 5 yards aimed at a black paster. Yeah, like nobody's impressed. That doesn't matter. What does matter is all the information that you guys couldn't see on the camera that you will see as the end user when you're doing this training. And what I was looking for was, did that dot leave as fast as it, did it return as fast as it left? And how precisely did it return? And then when I felt that trigger go off, what was the behavior of that dot? So it should have just quickly left, quickly returned, the trigger's breaking, and the dot's just staying right there. All right, guys, so once you're getting comfortable with those 50-50s, then I want you to move on to the doubles process that Ben Stoeger and Kwanzaa Kim subscribe. If you want, check those guys out. There's lots of excellent books. I am going to change a little bit of what they're doing, though, here for you guys, because I believe it's important. They will have you draw the gun and then execute. I do not want you drawing the gun, all right? I want you figuring out what right looks like here first, because this is gonna heavily play a huge component into us developing our index, right? Over-developing an index to have the gun go wherever we look is extremely important for law enforcement, all right? We need that gun to land right on that subject immediately and where we need the bullets to go. It can't be all over the place and then we have to make corrections. We don't have that time because we're usually reactive, right? We're reacting to some type of stimulus. To do that and develop a good index, I need to understand what I'm trying to create first. So to just not make the process go any longer than it has to, I find that it goes a lot faster if we just figure out what right here looks like, and then we can get into the draw once we know exactly what our pressures and our vision need to look like isolated. Then we can add that next layer of drawing the gun and making sure we are able to draw the gun, bleed off the tension, have the dot stop, press the trigger, do all those things that we're doing here. We're just removing this component, all right? And this will definitely expedite your learning curve with this. So now we're gonna go into the doubles. We're 5 yards from the target, not very far, right? What I'm looking for is really at this distance, I'm looking to shoot the gun as fast as I can possibly pull the trigger for the most part. And I'm looking to really keep like all the rounds within like a quarter or so size group, all right? Maybe a silver dollar, right? We'll see what happens. But regardless, what I want is I want to run this gun as hard as I can, and I'm not waiting for the gun to return. So it's one sight picture, and I'm pressing the rounds twice, maintaining good visual anchoring to the black pasters, and doing everything I can to not change any structure or pressures in the shooting process. All right, so it'll look like this. If we have some mistakes, we'll talk about that. Talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever I see. Pay attention to the process, and then I want you guys to ask yourself, what did I see and what did I feel? So it'll look like this, all right? All right. Shot fairly aggressive. I'll pick that up a little bit, right? I want you to look at what we have here. We've got 2 rounds basically in themselves. It's only 5 yards, right? But that was perfect execution of what I was looking for at 5 yards. Now, after I fire that sequence, I'm gonna start to ask myself, what did I see? What did I feel? What did I feel from my grip? What did I see from my vision? What information was the gun giving me? Both positive and negative, right? If there's a mistake, I wanna start tying that mistake and cause an effect to that, because that's going to give me information later on in my shooting journey about shot calling, right? You'll start tying correct behavior and incorrect behavior from feedback from the gun, and that will give you instantaneous information about where that round went. That's very important for us when we're using this gun, whether it's competition or real life, to know exactly where that round went, right? It's called shot calling. It's referred to as shot calling, all right? This process will help you with your shot calling as you're tying cause and effect if you're paying attention to the process. If you're just blindly clacking off 2 rounds and going through the motions, then yeah, man, like you're not gonna get anything out of this. We have to tie cause and effect. We have to be processing what's going on in our hands, what's going on in our body, what's the structure look like, and what's my visual anchoring feel like, and how does that gun return, all right? We'll add all of that together, both positives and negatives, and over time, you will start to develop a really durable, consistent grip and start to really understand how to refine that visual connection to a small spot. So we'll shoot a couple more of these, we'll see what presents itself, and then we'll talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. All right, so every time I got done that set of doubles, I was asking myself, hey man, what did I see? What did I feel? There was one slight little mistake here. We'll come in and look at this. That guy right there. All right, so it doesn't look like a big deal, right? But nonetheless, I felt some type of tension from my shoulders where my structure changed and I kind of pushed on the gun a little bit, right? That was me seeing the dot leave a little bit and then wanting to help it to come back, right? So a lot of times you'll see like this was a physical problem, but the root cause of the problem was actually a visual stimulus that caused it, right? I got sucked into the dot a little bit, I saw it leave, which then made me have a physical reaction, which was pushing on the gun. So if I really wanted to fix that problem, I'm not gonna focus more on, hey man, don't push on the gun. I have to focus more on the visual component to make sure I'm more disciplined to not look at that dot in recoil. And then if that happens, I'll be less likely to have that physical response. In the beginning, this is very difficult, but as you play with this and go further and further back, it'll make a lot more sense. Key components that we're really looking for in the doubles process, all right? We are looking to shoot in a predictable manner, all right? I am getting a sight picture, right? Or some type of confirmation level coming back in to my hit zone when I'm pressing the trigger, but I am not waiting for it. That is the difference. I know if I stay visually anchored here, hold the gun at that spot, press the trigger as fast as I can, the gun will come right back through this path and stop. But I'm not waiting to see that to press the trigger. I'm trusting the process that it will be there, and through that, then I get the execution like that. If I wait for it, then I'm not actually developing that skill of being able to shoot predictively and very fast and aggressive, right? So I'll do one real quick for you guys before we step back of what that would look like, all right? This is incorrect. I don't want you seeing this feedback. And I'll bring it close to where it's not as dramatic as last time, but nonetheless, the gun returned, all right? All right, so if you guys could watch the gun behavior, we're at 5 yards, right? So the gun doesn't leave the target really, doesn't leave that black paster that far. It only goes up maybe, I don't even know, maybe a couple inches or so. I'm not paying attention to that because I'm not looking for the dot, I'm staring at the black paster, right? So it's leaving it, it goes wherever the hell it goes, and it's coming back. But the gun, which you'll see at this distance, it levels out very quick, all right? So although that might have seemed fast, that was on the cusp, right? But that was, the gun returned before I pressed the trigger, all right? So you need to be aware of that, be honest with yourself, ask yourself that. Did I wait for that dot to return back to that black paster before I pressed the trigger? Or was I already pressing it and then I saw the dot return to the black paster? All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this process and we're gonna keep stepping it back. So we'll go back another 5 yards. So now we'll go back to 10 yards now, all right? So we're gonna repeat the exact same process. Every time I go back to a new yard line, I'm going to restart with the 50-50s, all right? This is training. This is us figuring out what right looks like, and then us desensitizing ourselves, right? Because that's a big part of shooting. When you're uncomfortable, right? You're more likely to make mistakes. So we need to immerse ourselves in stuff that's uncomfortable, desensitize ourselves to that, and then the more desensitization that we have with that, the more comfortable we become living in that space, right? So right off the bat, I'll start with the 50-50s. I'll see how that the gun's behaving. I'll see how it's tracking. I'll see what it looks like it was in return. I'll get a lot of feedback about what my grip and my pressures need to look like. Once that's looking good, then I'll go into the doubles. So the grouping is going to expand a little bit, right? So we need to set expectations. Obviously, I'm not going to be putting them in a quarter-size group at 10 yards, although that would be nice, and I'll continue to keep trying to quest for that. A realistic expectation would be like a nice fist-sized group, centered around the visual spot that I'm anchored to, right? So like that's important. Anchored to that cluster of black pacers there, and I'm looking for a group, circularly around that black group of pacers there. All right. So I'll go back to the 50-50s first with this, and I'm gonna get some feedback of the gun and what I need to do at this yard line. That looks pretty good. That looked good. That first round I kind of pushed on a little bit, but the gun returned very nice. That one returned a little bit high on the black paster, so that was just a little bit of visual disconnection from the target. That looked good. Last one. Good. All right, so now I'll get into my doubles. Same thing, not slowing down. All right, let me get a couple more there. Some good things and some bad things. I still got that fist size group, right? But regardless of that fist size group, I'm seeing a trend, right? The trend is a little bit low. So this is fine, right? But this is down here and this one here. Although we're still in the A zone, it's still in a fist size group outside of that one. There's incorrect behaviors there, right? So I need to be able to tie cause and effect when you're starting to get stuff like this, right? What I saw for this one here was just a little bit of a support hand pressure change, kind of like pushing on the gun. And then I felt a little bit of me just kind of like trying to return the gun, right? So I was just putting a little extra emphasis on trying to bring the gun back down physically because I was getting a little bit stimulated by the dot on this one. Right there, that's perfect execution. These two, that's trash. All right, so I'm being extremely nitpicky, right? Most people are gonna look at that, they're like, hey dude, that's max points, that's great. It's like, yeah man, this is not a pass or fail thing, all right? So you need to understand that. This is skill development, us figuring out the micro nuances of what right looks like. These two are not right. In real life, in a competition, I'll take those rounds all day. It's max points and it's in the high vital area, right? So yeah, dude, I'll take them. But if I start to allow this type of behavior in my training and check it off as correct, in real life or in competition, this will look worse, all right? Or I have the potential for it to look worse. I don't want to rely on luck. I want to rely on my skill, all right? So when I noticed that those two rounds were a little janky, hey, I got to tie cause and effect, and then when I go do it again, which we're going to do it again, we'll make those corrections. We are going to make those corrections, right? And then burn that into our subconscious to what our performance needs to be. So we'll go back, make a couple corrections here. All right, so we'll make those corrections, none of which will be slowing down. It's just executing it correctly, right? So if I want to be able to execute at speed, I need to train in that particular realm, right? I can't slow down and expect the problem to fix itself. I have to, if it's falling off at that speed, that yard line, whatever it is, or for what my level of expectation is, or for what I want at that yard line, I need to live there, immerse myself at that speed, that distance, and make the correction there. Slowing down will not fix it, all right? Yes, it maybe gets me a better result, but then as soon as I pick back up, I never learned the little nuances or the behaviors that needed to happen at that given speed and that given distance to get the correct behavior from the gun. So like I said, if that's the result you're looking for that level of speed and accuracy at this particular yard line, then you need to live there and train there and tie cause and effect. And over time and through purposeful training, you will start to make those refinements and they'll become more consistent. So we'll make my corrections now on this. We're all taped up and we'll see what happens. All right, come on down. So I cleaned up the vertical, right? So this is pretty good here. I still had one that dropped a little bit low. Still got my nice fist size group, but I got a little low. So I corrected the right side pressure change, but I still had a little bit of me trying to return the gun, right? So I got to pay attention to that. We're not going to play with it here, but if you were seeing something like this, and I'm being nitpicky, guys, right? Like, you guys are probably like, fuck this, dude. Like, that's fine. Like, I get it, dude, right? But like, the goal is, I know what I'm capable of and I know what I should be doing. That's trash, all right? If you're doing that and you're new to this, like, fucking rock on, bro, right? But once you start doing stuff good, just keep raising the bar, all right? Not too happy with that, but nonetheless, that's good, right? This shows me like, hey, dude, you're a bonehead and you can't talk and shoot that well at the same time on camera, but we'll make it work. So we're gonna go back to 15 yards now. I'll tape this all up. We'll go back to 15 yards and we're gonna repeat that process. What you're gonna see at 15 yards, this will become drastically harder, all right? Because there's an element that's gonna present itself at 15 yards that doesn't necessarily really present its ugly head yet from 10 yards and in. So from 10 yards and in, with a good, durable, consistent grip, I can collect alphas at warp speed, doing a lot of visual issues. As you saw, I had some visual issues there, and it's still within a fist-size group at 10 yards, all right? Yes, like I said, I'll take that in real life, but in training, when I'm setting parameters and I'm trying to diagnose, that's trash, right? I need to fix that stuff. At 15 yards, this is where you're gonna see I'm gonna pay for that stuff. So if I do that same stuff back here at 15 yards, now the rounds aren't gonna be most likely in the A zone, right? It'll be either a larger spread in the A zone or they'll start to become Charlies, right? And that is what I'm not looking to do. So we're always, as this whole program goes on, we are looking to shoot warp speed with surgical accuracy. They need to be A zones. I'm never gonna shoot a Charlie and be like, it's good enough, right? Nope. In training, it's never good enough, right? Unless it's an A zone. If you're looking at competition, yep, sometimes fast Charlies and things like that are good enough, but we are looking at how competition training strategies blends in to law enforcement training and execution. All right, so we want to hold ourselves a little bit more stringent, especially in this process. When we get into other stuff, I'll allow you guys to like span out a little bit, accept some different stuff, because we're focusing on other things, such as like movement and different stuff, and that takes more bandwidth. But right now, when we are isolating grip and vision, we want to hold ourselves to a very tight standards, all right? So at 15 yards, if you're shooting predictable and you're shooting really aggressive, Ben Stoger and Kwanzaa Kim, who came up with this, they'll say, hey man, like if you're holding A zones, you're doing good. I would agree with that. You are doing good. But I would also add the caveat is there's a lot of meat on the bone. All right, so I'm gonna shoot this and I'm not looking to hold all A zones. I'm looking for like, again, that fist and a half size group with shooting predictive at 15. If it doesn't happen, I'll tie cause and effect for you guys on the camera and then we'll try to make that correction, all right? All right, 50-50s at 15. All right, that looked pretty good. Clean dot behavior, fell right back to the black cluster of pasters. I'm happy with that. So now I'm just gonna tell myself like, hey dude, do that again. That looked good, clean return. The one bullet's a little bit higher the cluster because I'm aiming high of the cluster, which I shouldn't do, but nonetheless, all the behavior was good. That one was kind of trash. The round was good, the round's right in there, but the return was sloppy into the left Alpha Charlie line. And that would have maybe got lucky, but probably would have been like a left Charlie. All right, so I need to watch that firing hand pressure. That looked good. One last one. I like to do these in sets of 5s or so, and then I'll switch into the doubles. All All right, so now we're gonna get into our doubles now. All right, so Ty cause and effect from the feedback that I'm seeing. I don't need to see the bullet holes down there. I got one a little bit to the low left, still in the A zone, right? But we'll go check it out. I just saw some shitty feedback on my third set of doubles. And yep, here she is. Yeah, just saw like a streak, right? So I'm not looking for bullet holes. I'm trying to keep my eyes aimed right here, precise and anchored. And then I'm seeing the feedback in my awareness of what's happening. And on the third iteration of those doubles, I saw like a weird streak. And with me understanding this, tying cause and effect, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have something on the lower left side. Luckily, it wasn't egregious. It's still an A zone, right? But nonetheless, it was an incorrect behavior, and it was caused from me just kind of pressure changing with my firing hand during that third set of doubles. And as a right-handed shooter, like, yep, that makes sense. Now this, I'm very happy about, right? That's perfect execution at 15 yards, shooting predictively. I mean, we obviously have the 50-50s in there as well, right? But that's, what? We got 5 50-50s, and then we have 5 sets of doubles. I think I shot 5, maybe 5 or 6, whatever. Like, that's a solid grouping with all that mix in there. I'm pleased with that, right? Congratulations, pat yourself on the back. No, we got to go farther back. Don't worry, I'll probably fuck it up. But we're here for it, right? Because this is training, right, guys? This is not pass or fail. Like I said, you'll hear me say it 100 times today. This is us figuring out what right looks like. That round went really well. So I'm not going to hang out there. I'm going to keep throttling up. All right, let's go farther back. Now we got to go to 20. All right. So what am I going to go to? 50-50s, right? This is training. Get an understanding of how this gun's going to behave on there. Set myself up for success. Figure out the nuances, right? Figure out the correct pressures. Figure out everything structure-wise, visually, that I need to get this gun to react the way I want in a predictable manner. All right, so I'm going to do these and then try to clean up any mistakes that I can before I start crushing doubles. That was pretty fucking trash, I'm not going to lie. That was like way too low in the A zone. That's good. That's money. Right? That looked good. That looked good. 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 All right. Let's throttle that up with some doubles here. All right. I got one a little low there. Not complete trash. I got one Charlie. I do got a couple low alphas here. At 20 yards, shooting pretty aggressively, like not the end of the world, but like we talked about, like there's still some stuff in there that I felt like I was trying to return this gun. I was losing some of that visual precision as I was getting farther back, right? The dot starts tracking all over this target. It takes a lot of discipline to really kind of stay focused. If I had to contribute what was really going on, I would say it was most likely visual. Right, I was getting visually distracted, losing visual discipline, which allowed these little micro mistakes to creep out, right? This was just an expansion of the vision, right? As you expand your vision, your cone of circumference, all right? So like if I leave this small spot and I start to expand to a larger small spot, or yeah, relatively to the target, larger small spot, the gun on the return has the freedom to go anywhere it wants within that circumference there. All right, so I need to really refine that spot to get the gun to return precisely. If I get the gun to return precisely, then if I make a little mistake, well, it's an A zone, right? Or it's still a good vital hit. If I have my vision expanded out and I give that gun that freedom to range wherever it wants, and it lands, say, here, and then I make a little support hand mistake, well, boom. Now we got ourselves a Charlie, or maybe worse, a Delta or a Mike, right? So you set yourself up for success by really picking a small spot and then getting that gun to land precisely. And although we're questing for perfect execution, right, we know we're humans and we know we make mistakes. By getting our gun to land precisely, we have a little wiggle room for error, all right? Although in this process, we are looking for perfect execution, but that's a good strategy, right, visually. Pick small spots, get the gun to land precisely, and that gives you a little wiggle room. All right, so we had one Charlie at 20 yards there. Obviously, as we get farther back, the groupings are going to start to get a little bit bigger. The Charlie I'm upset about. Everything else is like okay. I'd like to get rid of maybe these lower alphas there, but not horrible, not horrible. We'll keep rolling with it. I'll haze myself later. This is life. All right, 25 yards, the man maker. All right, this is where we hurt our feelings. So we got to go back to 25 yards. 25 yards shooting predictive doubles. This is where you're going to learn a lot about your shooting. I encourage you definitely exploring and getting back to this level. But it doesn't have to happen the first day, right? You could start the first day at 5 yards, stay there for a fucking month, stay there for a week. I don't care. Pay attention to how the gun's behaving, make those refinements, and then slowly step back. What you will see is at 15 yards, it's going to get drastically harder because, like I said, that's where that visual component really becomes important. And it's not really, although it's being tested closer up, you can get away with stuff there and not realize that you're making visual mistakes. Back here, any visual mistake, yeah, man, it's going to print really bad. All right, so go back to the 50-50s. Go over here, so I'm in line with my target. Go back to the 50-50s and get this gun to behave the way I need it to. Looked okay. Not bad. All right, so we're looking good there. Now we're gonna go to our doubles. All righty, let's check her out. That felt decent, I'm not gonna lie. Felt pretty good about that, but I missed one in my feedback here. All right, so pretty solid work, all A zones, right? I got one Charlie. Wah. This is life. All right, but really what I'm mad about, not that I got the Charlie, I wasn't able to call which shot it was, right? So when I left that yard line there, I'm like, yeah, man, like that looks pretty good. I'm not shocked that it happened because some of the stuff was like dancing around, but that didn't look any different to me than what some of this other stuff looked like, right? So what that tells me is there's some micro information in there that I missed throughout the shot process. I need to pay attention to that, all right? So I care less about the Charlie. I care more about that I wasn't able to tie the difference between these to these. But if we're being realistic, at 25 yards, we're talking like a very, very small amount. That is a high level of shot calling. But nonetheless, we're always questing for more, all right? This pretty much wraps up our doubles process, all right? This was exploratory training. This is getting you to use yourself as the barometer to figure out stuff, right? So I teach a lot like this. This approach has come from Ben Stoeger. I think it's very beneficial, especially for cops, right? You need to start being your own teacher. Now you do need guidance, which is why we make series like this and why we teach classes. But once you have the information, you need to start understanding the exploratory process and then be able to tie cause and effect and understand about the principles of how we're trying to get the gun to behave, right? So this was all exploratory. You notice I didn't give you any techniques. I didn't give you any tips on gripping a pistol. I just told you what you wanted to see of the behavior from the gun, and I left all the corrections up to you. I like to start off with this. When we come back, when I load up my mags, we're gonna talk about some technique stuff that can assist you in getting this type of level of accuracy and speed at those distances, right? Nonetheless, these are going to be very specific to you, and I'll dive into this deeper when we come back, but this is exploratory training. This is process-oriented training. It is a little overwhelming at first, but this is how you develop skill. Not with, hey man, where are the bullets? That's the only information that it tells me. And then I look at my little wheel, right? You guys ever see those wheels where it tells you like low, left, healing, whatever, like all these different things, right? It's all garbage, it's all crap, it's all incorrect, right? I could put a bullet in any one of those things doing anything other than what it said I did, right? So it's lacking information on what that is. Those wheels are created by people that don't actually understand shooting because they don't train in this manner. All right, so we come back, we'll actually give you a little bit more substance in the technique realm, and then we'll come back and we'll go back to process-oriented. All right, guys, so now we're going to talk about technique versus principles, and we have to understand exactly what's the difference is between them and how we should apply them and what we're looking for, right? So I'm sure some of you guys are going to get this portion in the video series and you're going to be like, this is fucked. This dude should have literally started with what he's about to intro now and then did the doubles process. Well, I'll disagree with you, right? Just like the old Chinese philosopher, forget who it is, but teach a man to fish, he'll feed himself for a lifetime. Give a man a fish, he'll feed himself for a day. Well, this is my goal. I'm teaching you how to fish. By starting with an exploratory process, you are opening up your bandwidth. You are opening yourself to different understanding about shooting and how to approach shooting, which is extremely important. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of info to help you with that process, but it's still going to be you figuring out your process. So we're going to talk about techniques here, right? So a lot of times if you've been to classes before or your department, these instructors want to give you a technique that works for them, a technique that's specific to them and the gun they're shooting, and their body type, their physical abilities or inadequacies, whatever it may be. It's how they interface with a pistol. That does not work across the board for everybody. There's tons of phenomenal top level shooters. And if you take like the top 5 shooters in the world, they're all doing something a little bit different technique wise. What they're not doing different is their approach to shooting and the principles, right? They're all questing for a durable, consistent grip that maintains the same behavior throughout the shot string. That they all are doing. But where they put their support hand, how they quantify pressures, where they put their thumbs, all these different little technique variants are specific to them. So what I want you to do is I want you to understand the process. I want you to understand the behavior that we're questing to get the gun to behave like, and then I want you to figure out your technique built around your gun and your physical abilities or limitations, all right? So to kind of prove that home, I'm gonna do a couple of demonstrations here, all right? So we'll go back to 5 yards again, right? And this is just to open up your bandwidth. I'm not advocating for you to shoot like this or to apply this technique, but I just want you to see some of the principles here at work, if I do them correctly. All right, so I'm gonna take a principle-based approach with poor technique. All right, so nobody who's normal is gonna say that you shouldn't be high on the backstrap with your firing hand when establishing a dominant grip, right? Like nobody's like, hey man, you should hold the gun down here. That's better for recoil management, right? Nobody says that. Well, if I take a principle-based approach and I take my firing hand off the gun, all right, and I have no back support, no leverage to the back of the gun, and I just hold it with my support hand and I just use my firing hand to press the trigger, can I still get this gun to react in a predictable manner that's consistent and durable? Well, let's see. And we'll go back to the doubles, right? So I'll take the firing hand off. I'm just gonna set my grip like I normally do without my firing hand, and I'm just gonna press the trigger. Turn that dot up a little bit. All right, so shooting the same level of aggression, right, at the same yard line. Let's look at the result. Nice little cluster right around our visual stimulus. Now, is that a good technique? No, it is not a good technique. But what that's supposed to reinforce for you, and hopefully you made this connection, that if I double down on the principles, all right? So I had poor technique, but I made sure with that poor technique that it was durable and consistent. If it's durable and consistent, the gun will react in a predictable manner, right? The dot tracking behavior will be the same, although maybe slightly different than what I'm traditionally want with my correct grip. It's still gonna act the same. If it's acting the same, I can predict the behavior and I can start shooting aggressive, knowing how the dot's gonna return back to the target and give me that result. So when you're going through this exploration process of the doubles that we did before, I encourage you to try different things. Find out what works for you, and just know that we are looking to create a durable, consistent grip, and that's okay if it looks different than, say, your hero that you look up to. You have to find your grip surrounded by the principles. Yes, I use techniques to hold a gun. Yes, the world's best shooters use techniques to hold a gun, but it's techniques that's specific to them and their gun. Find your technique surrounded by the principles, and that will lead you to success. All right, let's do one more demonstration. We'll teacup the gun. I don't think this requires a ton of explanation that this is bad, right? But this is bad. All right, so we'll check this out and I'll do the same thing. All right, add ammo there, and you can see we have the exact same result. The one I pushed on a little bit on the gun, right? So I violated the principle. I changed the behavior of the gun because that's stupid and it's not a good way to hold a pistol. But nonetheless, I changed the behavior of the gun and I kind of pushed one a little low there, right? Even with that dumb technique, if I just didn't change anything, I was able to get a really nice tight group, pressing the trigger as fast as I can, all right? So think about that. When we come back, I'm gonna give you guys exactly how I go to hold a pistol, but this doesn't mean that this is going to work for you. This is what I find works for me. All right, guys, so now we're gonna talk about the techniques that I utilize to grip a pistol. Like I said before, this is specific to me, my hand size, and the gun that I shoot, all right? But nonetheless, I will show you how I do it. So, yes, I wanna be high on the backstrap with my firing hand. I wanna minimize any excess movement that I get from this gun, right? The lower I am, the more that gun has the ability to rock back, and that's going to slow down the return. So I'm not trying to stop the gun, right, from recoiling and just have it track nice and flat. I don't care about that, but I am trying to manage and take out some of the excess movement that I can, all right? So I'm managing it, not trying to stop it. You're not gonna stop recoil. Don't try to stop the recoil. The pressure, the way I quantify the pressure in my firing hand is I hold the gun like a can of Coke. All right, a fresh can of Coke, I pop it open. If I squeeze it too tight, I'll crush the can and overflow the soda. If I hold it too loose, well, then I'll drop the soda, right? So when I conceptualize how the pressures that I'm putting on this pistol, that's the way I do it. So it's just enough to hold the gun, right? But not enough to try to over influence the gun. What I'm trying to minimize is me being so tight on this gun that it starts to bog down my trigger finger, right? The more relaxed I am with this hand, the faster I'll be able to press that trigger, right? If I start to, I find for me, if I start to really tense down on this grip, this finger starts to lose dexterity and it limits the rate that I can press the trigger. So I keep this hand nice and relaxed. There are people out there that can hold a pistol with 100% pressure, however they quantify that, and 100% pressure on their support hand, and they're able to isolate their trigger finger and shoot really fast. Hey man, that's specific to them. This is why I'm talking about principles, not specific techniques that you have to do. You have to find out who you are and what you're going to be least likely to change, because that's the overarching theme that we care about. How can I interface with this pistol and then have the most likelihood to not change anything throughout the shot string, no matter how aggressive I'm shooting or how many rounds? That's where the gold is, right there, all right? Holding the pistol in a manner that you don't change it no matter how you're shooting. Whatever that looks like, I don't care as long as it's obviously safe, all right? So firing hand, nice and relaxed. My support hand, I'm anchoring in to my fingers, all right, on my firing hand. So I'm using this like a fulcrum. I'm driving my fingers really tight into my hand. By doing that, that puts a good anchor point. When I close my support hand grip, that requires no muscular strength from my biceps, shoulders, or chest to really push on this gun, because the pressure of me driving my hands in just by the natural movement of closing the grip, that makes the gun really tight in my hands. And that allows me to stay nice and relaxed in my shoulders and posture and just bring the gun up and work the trigger. All right. So another thing on my support hand, the way my hands work and the way I like to do it is I like to try to bite in with my support hand on the back corner of this gun here. All right. So when I put these fingers and I drive them in, I'm wrapping around and I'm trying to get my support hand to hit the back of that gun. All right, what that does is that gives me good pressure front and back on the gun, not on the side. I find when I try to put pressure on the side of the gun traditionally, if I do have a pressure change, that makes the gun behave left and right. All right, and when we're shooting people or paper, if we look at the target, if I'm going to have a pressure change, I'd prefer the pressure change to be front and back, because that will make the gun behave slightly differently up and down, right? If you look at an A-zone, there's more point value up and down than there is left and right. And if you look at a human person, there's more vitals up and down than there is left and right. So, like I said, for me, obviously I'm questing for perfect execution, but we do make mistakes. If I'm going to make a mistake, I'd rather have the gun behave a little bit erratically up and down, not left and right. And by anchoring into the front and back of that, that's able to keep that gun reacting up and down a lot cleaner. All right. Structure in the wrists, right? I'm not getting crazy with like really locking these wrists. Nonetheless, they are locked, right? But I'm not actively trying to put leverage with either of my wrists. I'm holding them in a natural, I'm holding the gun in a natural manner that's comfortable. I find if you're holding the gun in a manner that's comfortable, you'll be least likely to change it, right? And that will produce a better shooter than trying to maintain something that's uncomfortable for longer shot strings. Yes, you can get away with certain stuff by doing that, and there are good shooters that do that, and they find success in that, and that's fine. But we're talking how I grip a pistol, and I find what's best for me is to kind of keep it simple, stupid, the KISS approach, right? I hold the gun that's comfortable, hold the gun in a manner that's comfortable, and I do everything I can to not change that, and I will get a very good result shooting very fast and accurate at distance. So that's what I'm looking for in a pistol. You can take that, use it for yourself, play with it. Nonetheless, it doesn't really matter how you're gonna hold this pistol, whether you're gonna use my grip or something else you're gonna come up with, or somebody else that you watch. Just play with this stuff and then grade it on the behavior that we talked about, the principles of what we're trying to get the gun to behave like, right? I'll reiterate them one more time. I want the gun to land at a spot that I look at on the index, which we'll talk about later on. And I want it to return back to that anchored spot that I'm visually connected to as quick as it left. And I want to be able to smash on the trigger as hard as I want and not have the gun change its behavior, all right? That's how we grade it. However you hold the gun, if you can do that and you're getting that behavior, dude, that's what you're looking for. I'm not looking to change you, not looking to make clones of me. I'm looking to help you find the best version of you with your hand size, your abilities, limitations, the gun you're shooting. Obviously, different guns are going to require different pressures. You're shooting a subcompact gun, right? A Glock 43X, that clearly requires more pressures amount of pressure, the way I quantify it, than I am shooting a heavier gun like a PDP or a full-size Glock or something like that. Nonetheless, the technique and the concepts and the principles are all the same, just the amount of pressure that I try to put on that gun and maintain are different and subjective to that platform. All right, hopefully this helps. Take these concepts, take these techniques, and then I want you to apply that to the beginning process of the one-shot returns, trigger control at speed, 50-50s, and doubles. Through that process, you will figure out exactly what your grip needs to look like.